Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manoj Agarwal, and today I have a special guest with me, Timothy Dick. So Timothy is a lifelong seasoned entrepreneur, founder, and CEO that has built multiple successful companies from the ground up. He's the founder and CEO of VOIPO and ProfitLayer, and he has been three-time Inc. 5000 CEO. He has built industry. He has helped build industry icons such as HostGator, which grew from a small company to over 3 million websites hosted during his time there. He's an active investor with investments in well-known tech companies like Zenefits, Postmates, Instacart, and many more. His broad experience with both small businesses and rapidly scaling large businesses gives him a lot of perspective and insight that he can use to solve the toughest business problems and grow and scale a business. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here and to chat with you and your audience.
Thanks a lot. Now I know you have had tremendous amount of success in your career, so let's start there. Can you tell us some of the early days when you got involved in HostGator? I'm sure it must have been an insane time of insane growth.
Yeah, so I was at the time that I got involved with HostGator, I was 19. The founder of HostGator was actually 3 years older than me. We have the same birthday, just 3 years apart. And we had actually met on a message board online, an industry web hosting message board. So the short version of how I got to there is that, first I was born and raised in rural West Virginia. So it's a very small town, very rural, really a first generation entrepreneur. My dad was a coal miner. My mom was a homemaker. Didn't really have any other entrepreneurs, but I always felt kind of different and driven, and I just basically got on the internet, and once I got on the internet, this was like late 90s, early 2000s. So it was kind of in the fun times where the boom, if you could make a website that had moving text, you were golden. So here I was like building websites for people online, just all self-taught. I don't think that many of those people realized that I was like 13 or 14 years old at the time. But, basically, building websites, got into web hosting, actually got a reseller account and my own dedicated servers, and kind of went through, everything to build a web hosting business, and ran that through middle school and high school. I was basically making six figures then, and it was something that I just looked at things, and just basically, if there was something I didn't know, I knew that I could figure it out. And I knew that just being resourceful and looking and trying to just find a way, I could always figure it out, and I always did. And then after I finished high school, one of the things I at the time, just like a lot of people growing up, like I wanted to leave West Virginia. I wanted to move somewhere else, really somewhere that was bigger. A fun fact is that during that whole time, that when I lived with my parents, we did not have broadband. It was not available in the area. So we had dial-up. I did have my own phone line put in for it, so wouldn't have to interrupt calls and things, but I did everything on dial-up. So I remember downloading some stuff. Even it was like you would let it run overnight to and hope you didn't get disconnected. And it was really exciting. Like whenever I moved, I actually moved to my first apartment. It was a few hours away, and a little bit more of a larger city in the state, still very small relative to a lot of places. but I could get cable and DSL there. So that was like exciting. So graduation day, moved out. But I still wanted to go somewhere bigger, to a bigger city. So I had ended up moving to upstate New York at the time, and it kind of rolled my hosting business into another there, and did some interesting things there. We had I was part of the management team of a hosting company there, and we had a Quiznos franchise and just did all kinds of stuff. And then we were having some disagreements. It was something that the founder there and I didn't really see eye to eye on a lot of things. We just have different mentalities. I'm a little bit more of a quiet conservative guy. And he was a little bit more of a let's party all the time, have parties in the office, and just all kinds of stuff that were some differences. So from there, I was in the industry, had a lot of experience in that web hosting industry. And then, I met the HostGator founder online. We knew each other. And one day he convinced me to move down to Florida. And that was when HostGator was just a tiny little company. And he said, I think I'm onto something. It's starting to take off, and I think you can really help. And I was very business oriented, and it's funny to look back at some of my old archive stuff on the internet because I'm like so formal, and I'm more formal when I was like 12 than now. But I went down and helped basically build the team there, and we, I hired a CFO and hired the first HR person, and we had a pretty crazy ride there. We really just focused on the basics and just really providing good service, and build a reputation that just kind of made the company take off like a rocket, really. And we were doing well, and then he had actually asked me to start another business of some kind, because he wanted to diversify a little bit. So he said, why don't you go start something? I just want to invest in it. And basically it was a really interesting thing because it was like it took a little bit of convincing, to do it. And I ended up starting voice over IP business. And, so that was something that for a while I was, we spent about 2 years just in development because we were building out a voice over IP network to offer service nationwide. And at the time, the iPhone wasn't even out yet, so this was, like 2006, we were doing this. And so with it, I built it. I actually still own that company today. I bought him out a while back. He's not part of it, but he basically, once that business took off, then I phased out of HostGator and was really kind of only at that point kind of like involved in like strategic type stuff. So like, some bigger negotiations, M&A, that kind of stuff. And, and I had moved, we were in Texas at that point. We had left Florida, and I moved out to Southern California in 2010, I guess it was. So I've been out here about 10 years. And so, from there, that's kind of, that led into angel investing, consulting, and just opened up all of these doors because we had, HostGator was sold, had a very successful exit, and it just, opened up a lot of doors. And then now, I work with a lot of businesses, do consulting, and, still have, the voice of our IP service. We have about 100,000 customers all over the country. Some in Canada, not as many, but in the US we have about 100,000. And yeah, so.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you said about dial-up, because when I moved from India, I mean, India was even terrible. Like, it was a joke when in '97, and the first time I landed in Canada, that was the first thing I purchased. I mean, obviously I purchased a PC, but I was like,
Yep.
wow, you can get like stable, fast internet. This is like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, that was the same feeling. Like, whenever I first moved out, I was like, I was excited. I was like, wait a minute, I can get DSL and cable internet. Like, which one do I want? So I got both and tried them, and it was it was interesting. And that was over the years at HostGator, it was one of those situations where looking back, we didn't always know what to do. We just figured it out, and we just went, and we always just really focused on the fundamentals, and like provide really good service. If there's a problem, we were very transparent about it and fixed it. And we just tried to do the best that we could, and treat everyone well, in terms of customers, employees, all of that. And it just all worked out, and I think sometimes people get, they overcomplicate things, and think like, well, how am I gonna, I have to hire people. How do I do that? There's so much involved, and it's like, if you just look at things like one thing at a time and just break them down, it usually kind of works out, and even if you make a few mistakes, it works out. So we were unique in that we didn't have any, it was pretty much all organic growth, in terms of we did not have any like venture capital or outside investors or anything. It was, essentially all the profit for the most part was just being rolled back in. And the bulk of the business actually grew from Google AdWords and the affiliate program. So, we had an affiliate program where we paid out commissions, and so we had like this army of people that were promoting it, and those two things and word of mouth really are how we grew. And we had some very fun and interesting times there.
I'm sure. So just so that because like I have gone through these kind of hyper growth periods, and it is, as you said, like very interesting, challenging. People make mistakes, but you gotta move on and go with the flow. So just so that people understand, what kind of scale did you achieve, what kind of growth, can you give us an idea, like how many employees, how many servers, like what kind of growth did you experience, so that people can understand, how?
Yeah. So whenever I joined, the company, there were just a handful of people there, and I was technically, I guess I was COO. It was kind of like I know you can help do a lot of good stuff. I don't really know what you're going to do. So pick your title and figure out what you want to do. But we, basically went from that time to, we hired within that a year, we hired 200 or 300 more employees. I mean, we were growing in terms of revenue. It was just like compounding, and it was kind of, most of the numbers are public now because the company was acquired by a company that's publicly traded, a holding company that owns a bunch of other hosting companies. And so some of the numbers are out, but the revenue was in the hundreds of millions, and the exit was in the hundreds of millions. We had about, at the time that I was there, a little over 10,000 servers, and we had about 40,000 resellers, which that's a really interesting thing because back then, reseller accounts weren't as popular for hosts to offer. Some people thought, it's going to create a lot of competition. We're basically creating competition for ourselves, but we didn't look at it that way. We looked at it as like, we're basically, it's still very profitable to offer. And we're basically like, in a way, like giving people the ability to start a business that was one of the stable ways to generate, like that's why I love SaaS, like the subscription revenue. And the margins were just good because we had, like with servers, basically we would lease a server, so our cost for, the power, the connection to the internet, all of that might have been, a few $100s, and, we could put a couple thousand customers on there. So, they were paying, anywhere from $10 to $30 each a month. So beyond that, our next biggest, thing was the employee overhead. So
one thing you mentioned was, providing excellent service and taking care of the customers. With hundreds of thousands of customers, how do you do that at that scale?
I think a lot of it was really making sure that we had a close pulse on everything that was going on. Because I think a lot of times, like people, as companies grow, they kind of compartmentalize things, and so then you have like a management team, and it's like they're so busy dealing with different new challenges that come up as part of the growth that then it's like, okay, well, I have a customer service manager, I have someone that's handling that, so I can kind of just ignore it. And I have to give a lot of credit, to Brent, the founder, that founded it, because he would actually pretty much right until the company was sold. I mean, and at that time, he was making, we were like a couple $100 million, a year. It was like, highly profitable. So, he was doing well, but he would still hop on support calls, hop in live chat, and he always just put his personal email address out there. And we kind of all did that because it was one of those things that people really appreciated it. And having that pulse on it, allowed us to really see things from the customer viewpoint and be able to try to make things better based on what the customers wanted and not just some arbitrary goal that, we set. And so, it was like, let's just say like on a message board or something, because back then, Facebook and social networks weren't as prominent. It was more message boards and things like that. And people would post reviews and it got to a point where, people would post negative things, and, there would be like this army of people that would just be like, let's wait to hear their side of it, and, I remember once one of the funniest things with Brent, because Brent would just go on and just say, hey, I really don't think that, our rep told you that, but if they did, then I need to deal with that. And so forward that email to me, let me look it up and pull your account up. And if they told you that, then I'm going to PayPal you a couple $100 for pointing it out. And then I'm going to go fire that person or deal with it, because that's unacceptable. Because people sometimes would get, just get a little, exaggerate a little, like my website's been, down for, all day or something. And it was like a 5-minute thing. And, I'm losing millions of dollars every minute. And, and there was once that Brent actually posted on there that I thought was he told there was a guy that, had a website, but, he was like saying, I'm losing like $1 million every day and everything. And, and he had a $10 a month hosting plan. So, it was kind of like, the website obviously was not making that much money, but Brent actually just said, please email me your phone number ASAP. I want to call you. I want to get you on a flight. I want you to come down here because you're making $1 million with your website. I want to know how you're doing it, and like, let's work on some stuff together, you know. And it built trust, you know, because people would they knew that there was that open line of communications, and so they knew that, like, even as we scaled our team, and you know, we had people that were constantly being trained in groups. Like, we would have like we had built out like a training facility in our office, so we would have like a group that would go through the training, and then they would spend a few weeks learning, and then they would have to like pass like an internal test to officially start, you know. And as we grew, you know, to that many employees, and we were 24/7, so all of them were in Houston, and eventually we expanded to Austin and stuff. But with that many people, yeah, you know, the quality control, we had supervisors and managers, but everybody pretty much always knew, you know, in terms of customers, that they had that direct line. You know, so it was like, the rule was essentially for customers, you know, it was like, hey, if you have a problem, go through the normal support channels to try to get it resolved. So open a ticket or call in, or, you know, whatever. And if they can't get it resolved for you, then you can email the owner, you know. But if someone randomly emails and they're trying to solve a routine kind of problem, it was kind of like, well, if you don't have a ticket number though, then go back and get one and try to see if they can resolve it. But if they can't, you know, then you know, take care of it. And so, yeah, it was just kind of staying involved, you know. And you know, sometimes people would look at that and you know, say, well, is that really, you know, the best use of time, you know? And it's like, the hourly rate for that is, you know, just insane and everything. And it was like, at the end of the day though, that helps retention, that helps like keep the direction of the company moving in the right direction. I mean, it just impacted so much that it was almost like the intangible value of it, you know, and the perspective that we got, you know, was just huge.
Yeah, I mean, as you grow, like as you put it, like people start to get busy with things which are not very impactful, and you know, the lofty titles and the wealth mindset that comes in. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to lose touch. So you know, that was amazing that you were able to successfully take care of so many clients and make such a good business. So that was amazing. Now, one thing you mentioned as well, that you didn't take any investment from any venture capital or anything like that. So I want to
No, actually.
That. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there was no outside investment, no debt or anything. The only thing we really ever had was like a mortgage on an office building. You know, and until the day the company was sold, Brent actually owned 100%. You know, there were you know, some key people that, you know, were well compensated when at the time of the sale, but he owned everything. And you know, he's actually started from his dorm room. You know, so it was just kind of like just rolling everything back in. And I think that it was definitely not from a lack of opportunity, because I learned a lot about M&A, dealing with all of the offers, and it was very tempting sometimes, because I was the deal maker. I was the, you know, fixer, you know, go solve this problem, talk to these people, do this. And so we had a lot of people that would come in and make offers. And it started out like, I remember there was one time I spent like 3 weeks working on this deal with a company that was going to buy, they wanted to buy like a minority share of the company. And, you know, he had said, you know, Brent had told me this, if you can get this number, which was a completely, we thought, unrealistic number, then I want to do it, you know? And so, I mean, I spent a couple of weeks and basically got like a crash course in M&A, working with the fund that was trying to buy. They were on the East Coast. We were in Texas, and we had a lot of late nights going back and forth on things. We got to the number, a few weeks, and then Brett was like, "Really, you did?" I'm like, "Yeah." So we're ready to go, right? And because he had agreed to, I was going to make a 7-figure commission on that one to close that deal on top of things, and he was like, "Actually, if we're able to get that, what if we waited a few more years?" And so it was like, but I will say that the few weeks that I spent, I learned so much about how those types of funds work, and all the terminology, the definitions, and it's actually funny that fund, many years later, so it's like 10 years later now, when I'm doing consulting, that I actually have them, they have, as a client, they have me help evaluate deals sometimes with them. So that connection kind of lasted there, but we ended up not doing the deal, and they were shocked because they were like, this valuation was kind of pushing it. And and then whenever the eventual sell actually happened, it was a situation where he sold when he was like, this I need at least a couple $100 million, and that's, if I can't get it, then I remember one day he was just like, maybe my great grandchildren will be running it one day. It's like, it's just not, it wasn't like a priority. And and that was a big thing too. It was kind of like, whenever you take the outside investments and you do that, you it does change the dynamic some, and I'm on the side now of being on both the investor side and on the the company side. So it's something that I understand both. But whenever you take investors, the investors want to make money, and ideally we want to make money back as quickly as we can, and take, a lot of times that means that we want the company to take more risk, and grow faster. And one of the worst things, like, as an investor, especially like for Silicon Valley type funds and things, it's one of the worst things is to be sitting on money that's not spent. Because when the investor puts the money in, typically they know that it's a very high risk thing, and they know we either want to fail fast and know that it's not going to work and lose the money, or we want to see the results fast. We don't want you to just like take our money and set on it, and keep it for a rainy day, because that doesn't do us any good, in terms of getting our money back. So we knew that dynamic would always be there, and that was one of the biggest things. It was just kind of why we didn't really have a reason, and there were a lot of things that went right. It was just, we had good timing. We had a lot of things that were just kind of magically came together at the time. But ultimately, we wanted to stay the course and basically have full control. And that's something now that with even with VOIPO now, it's something that it's a business that the two of us owned. He invested the first $1 million, and then after that we were pretty much organic. But I ended up buying his shares out, and so I have all of it, and I get offers all the time, because it's like a lot of subscription revenue, utilities, telecom, pretty stable industry. So, but it's just something that I don't want to have to make decisions based on achieving a certain return or kind of compromising anything that I'm doing.
That's great. And one thing I want to talk about here is mental aspect of such
Mm-hmm.
success. Because I know a lot of people struggle to get to a success. To achieve the success that they want. But
Right.
what happens after that is a mystery to a lot of people. And I know you have a really good insight around that. So can you share with us your story, your experience of reaching that level of success so early, so quickly, so rapidly? How did you handle all that?
Yeah. So, I think one of the things that everyone kind of misses, or at least people they have the perception that, that everything's just perfect and magical. And it's like, when you make a lot of money or your company is growing like that, I can say that fast growth like that is extremely stressful. There's a lot of, times that you're like questioning, like, what you're doing. And, one of the things to think about, as it, especially now, with so many things changing with the pandemic and all of that, I actually had someone recently that, it was a friend that was kind of joking that, they just said, they were concerned about losing their job somewhere. And they're like, you don't have to worry about that. And I'm like, well, I actually kind of have to worry about it a little more, because I have the risk of, they have the risk of losing a job, and then, they would get another job at some point. It might take a little while, but they would be okay. But if I have a loss due to that, then it's going to impact dozens of families of my employees and our vendors, our customers. I mean, a failure in business, there's so much more pressure. And one of the things that I've learned is that over the years, there have been, I would say that there have probably been 3 or 4 times in the course of, speaking with VOIPO. So it's, started in 2006, so about 14 years old now. 3 or 4 times in that I would have probably given the company away on certain days. Like, just if I just don't have to deal with this anymore, you can just have it. Like, I just don't want to hear about it anymore. It's like, because there were such, at the time, things that seemed really crazy. Like, once was, voice over IP was such a new technology that there were, in the beginning, there were a lot of things that were uncertain about, like the regulations. Like, is it a phone company? Is it a data service because it goes over the internet? How is it regulated? And the FCC took the approach in the beginning of, let's just let it grow, and we're going to refuse to classify it. And so that created a lot of uncertainty, because especially in different states and things, there are different laws and requirements, and depending on which way you're categorized, like if you're a data service, you don't have to comply with the telecom laws, and you also don't have access to some of the things. So like in the early days, there were things like 911 service. Voice over IP companies in the very beginning, the FCC was trying to figure out a way to get 911 service available for voice over IP companies. But since we did not have physical infrastructure like the regular telephone companies, we could not access that. And so that was one of those times that created one of those crazy situations where a change overnight, and we go from making a healthy profit to losing $50,000 a month and like overnight, and that was a time where that was a long time ago, but it was like, I remember just like thinking like, this is like the end of the world, the company, we're just going to go out of business. Like, how are we going to recover from this? But, we just worked through it. We increased revenue, we cut back on expenses, we adapted, and, it actually, it's interesting because those cycles like that, it's like, it seems like every 3 or 4 years, there's something that happens that we, like at that time, it was a big drop in revenue. Another time it's been maybe like infrastructure problems or a problem with a vendor, or a key employee I had a situation with, some things like that. And each time you can, if you learn from it and adapt, then basically when you look back on it, say 6 months later, you're like, that was not a fun time, but we're much stronger as a company, because like whenever it was a financial issue, that was something that we were forced to look at our expenses, and make cuts that maybe we should have made sooner, but because we were very comfortable, and so it forced us to become leaner, and that shaped, how we continued to operate. Like one of the big shifts then, honestly, was shifting to a lot of our employees to remote positions, and that was many years ago. And so basically we cut like our, especially here in California, we cut our office size and all of that way down, and we were able to hire people in other states and in other countries. So we hired people in like Texas and Florida and some other states for certain positions, because the cost of living was so much lower. We were saving on real estate. And we also added in at that time some employees in the Philippines. And we were able to kind of do that. And I don't know that we would have done that fully, because past experience had been having everyone in-house. And, then later on, like another time that, we had a major situation, it was like a key vendor, has like infrastructure problems. And, like we've had issues like one example is a lot of our infrastructure is in IBM data centers. IBM, is like very reputable. I mean, it's kind of like solid as a rock, but and not always, because like we had a situation where they were closing one of their data centers, and they wanted us to get new servers and one of their others, because they were updating the design of it. And we went to, I remember, at Steve Sims's.
Yeah, we were in San Francisco when that
we
happened.
were in the, so we were saw, some data centers and things, and, it's kind of like they were talking about the newer designs and everything's modular and all that. And so what was happening, IBM had like a data center that was like 10 years old. And so it was outdated. So they're kind of like, we can't just move those servers that you already have that are basically the IP addresses are interconnected with thousands of other phone companies, because they don't fit, physically. They're a different design now because we've become more efficient, and we're closing that, and you've got to move everything within 2 weeks. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot, because we were talking like we have the network that has like like I'm gonna say we're definitely over 100 million minutes a month now, easily. So it's kind of like doing any maintenance with that. You have to really plan it in advance, notify people, do it late night, and it's like just moving everything. And it turned out we ended up being able to. We just kind of had to work through it, and I worked my contacts. One of the things that I've always seen as like a key thing is being very resourceful, and maximizing, figuring out like, here are the resources that I have to work with, whether it's, for myself and solving my own problem, or if I'm working with a client, for marketing or consulting or whatever, what do they have to work with? and leveraging those to, to move forward. And so with that, I worked a lot of contacts, and finally I got an extension. And it was funny because I remember we were down to the wire on it, like literally in terms of I remember there was one point that some of the employees there were not very happy because they're like, literally the racks that our servers were in, they're like, those have like notes on them, like do not unplug. They're like, because nobody was supposed to have an extension, of this, but it turned out they had botched the notifications a little bit because 2 weeks was obviously not a normal time frame. And once they realized that, they were able to give us more time and, called in favors, and we got through it. But it was rough. We had, we took a hit to our reputation because we did have some outages during that time. And we also had another issue with, one of our key employees on the technical side was basically he had to abruptly leave the company. And so we had a brand new CTO. Really, and at that time, we actually, for a while, we didn't even have a CTO. We were looking, and we had like interim, people that could kind of fill in. And this was all during this, right around the same time that IBM's like, hey, you got to move within 2 weeks. And it's like, that was another time that I'm just like, this is just insane. And that move actually, it's something that we learned a lot from it. We tried to communicate it to customers, but honestly, with phone service, it's something that ultimately, I mean, any downtime is unacceptable. So there were, for me, it was really frustrating, and just I was really stressed because I wanted so badly to be able to fix it, but that's not something that you can just fix, and a lot of people are like, well, can't you get a better, data center? And I'm like thinking, IBM's pretty top notch, it's like, can't you, like, why don't you spend money and pay someone to fix it? And it's like, I'm paying a lot of money to people. I'm paying consultants to even help. We have our team, like, I'm doing that. There's no magic fix. So we just had to deal with it. And, that's something that, again, we got through that, and it actually has made us a stronger company because we had to do a lot of upgrades and change some stuff that maybe, some stuff that it still worked, but, it was kind of like there was a better, more modern way to do it in terms of like programming. And we, ended up being in a much better position. We did take, like I said, a big hit with that, just in terms of, because of the volume and size of our customer base, and like some negative reviews and things from it. But we'll win them back. I'm pretty confident in that. And one of the things during that time that was really key for me, that was just kind of unexpected, is like, I mean, it was just like literally during this migration period, it was like wake up, sleep, and from the time I got up, it was just stress, and it was like this crazy time. And then I would get messages from customers that, like, were some of our longtime customers that had been with us for 10 years that were like, it happens, don't worry about it. There was one in particular that, he was like, he's like, I just want to send you an email and say thank you for this outage. And he said, I'm old, and I've been getting a lot of robocalls and telemarketers lately and stuff, and it's a nice break, And he's like, hopefully, you get it back up. He's like, well, I don't really mind it, And so it was kind of the fact that some customers were like, we don't like this outage, but we know that you're going to get through it. and you're going to fix it and you're going to make it right. That was the key thing that really helped. But one of the things that, I've always, learning from that, like I said, every few years there's usually something, and it's like, it's just really anticipating that there are going to be ups and downs. Because the same, yeah, go ahead.
I find the same thing. Like, we all have problems in our lives. Sometimes there's this misconception in people's minds that as the company grows or you have lots of money, the problems go away. But I just think the scale and the number of problems just grow, and you have more capacity to deal with them. But the problems never go away. And as you said, all these problems lead to a better standing, better everything.
Yeah, and if problems like that could be always solved with money, then all the world's problems could be solved. And it's kind of like there's a lot of stuff that it's just not that easy. And at the same time, there are the highs too. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is the more that I can kind of keep keep myself in a state of just kind of like, I don't want to say like numb or in the middle or anything, but just like basically like just knowing that there are going to be highs, there are going to be lows, because like we've had times where we've had sells where, we send out an email, do a big sell, and, we do have like a $500,000 day, and that's a big high, that's not a normal day, but with that, like you just can't really get caught up in the highs and lows, and you just kind of have to stay steady and know that it's going to happen. And one of the things that I've learned over time beyond that is just that I've realized that as an entrepreneur, that's always going to happen. And I am confident that if I lost everything, I would rebuild within a few months, a year, whatever. But, like I know that I have, enough in terms of skills, resources, connections, experiences over the years that I could just start something else.
Yeah. So that's a very valid point. I remember one time I was sitting with a venture capitalist, and he was from Eastern Europe country or something like that. And he told me that if somebody, like he got into venture capital by luck or whatever, and he said, I have no talent for it, I have no experience in it. If I lose this opportunity, I'm not going to be able to do anything. And he asked me, what about you? Like if I dropped you in the middle of somewhere, will you be able to do something? I said, yeah, I mean, I've done it multiple times. So you're absolutely right. Once you go through the ups and downs, you know that it's just a part of life, and deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, worst case, I look at it as like, sometimes like when you're dealing with those big problems, like it's kind of like maybe that would actually be a lot less stressful. It's like I might not be able to have a Tesla. I might have to swap the Tesla for, like a basic car or something, but like it's one of those things that it's just not being so attached to everything because we can't control it. Like there's a lot of people have the illusion, of that when to control things, and inside companies, everything's perfect. And I just both through investments and in consulting and, some of the companies that I have worked with are they're very large companies and small too. But like the point is, even the very large ones that have all the resources, like there's a lot of stuff that is going on behind the scenes that, they just fix it before it becomes public,
Yeah.
So
that's great. And to your point, one thing I want to note is like when I met you, we were in a group of like 20, 30, 40 people. And you were the most low-key person, but the more like and somebody told me, what you do and what you have done. Like, really, this guy? It was like it was a total surprise. But to your point, just getting not being attached to the outcome is a
Yep.
very good way to deal with it. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation and such a educational conversation about how to build and scale businesses to the level that you have done. And not a lot of people get to experience that. So thank you so much for spending this time and sharing your thoughts with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Appreciate you having me on, and it's been good. Getting to know you, and through the networking, and that's probably, I guess, that's maybe one of the final tips that I would give people in terms of, like, when you are dealing with problems, going through things, the ups and downs. Be sure to reach out to your network. The people that that are in business. A lot of people are kind of like, well, I can't like show that I'm having a problem, or I can't talk to someone. But it's actually the opposite. If you have a good network of people around you, like some of the groups that we're in, it's like everyone generally will offer help beyond what you ever imagine. So it would just be like, use your network and just ask.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, to share my story, I was going through some challenging time when I met you, and that challenge, is still sort of it is resolved, most of it, but the the education or the mentorship I got, not just about business, but just how to design a life, which was phenomenal. Like, within a 2 to 3 months period, like, my outlook on life itself changed because of the learning that I got. So absolutely right. Like, just reaching out to your network and talking to people who are genuinely caring is a game changer for sure. So thank you so much. Now, before I let you go, can you tell us how people can reach out to you, and if they want to subscribe or just
sure. If anyone wants to reach out to me, they can find me on any social platform, LinkedIn, Facebook, anywhere, Timothy Dick, or they can look for ProfitLayer, which is the name of the consulting company and agency, digital agency that handles marketing that I own. So ProfitLayer, and there's the ProfitLayer.com site, the ProfitLayer podcast on all the platforms, all that. So just find me on social media, Timothy Dick, or go to ProfitLayer.com, and happy to, feel free to connect with me on social media, and grow. Always looking to grow my network and meet more good people.
Awesome, great. I will add those links to the show notes, and so that people can reach out to you. Thank you so much once again.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Have a great day. Bye.